So, something I mulled throughout the week was when you have an event like this, you need closure because it's been important to everyone. Everyone's enjoyed themselves. And so at noon today, I started writing a review of the week. Everyone's name is mentioned. Rosie and Caleb and James, that includes you. So it's written in a cryptic fashion, almost like you would write in a diary. It's omnipotent in some cases, it's observed in other cases, and in some cases I just flat made it up. But it's reflective of what the week has been like. Sunday, meet and greet. Arrival at Pete and Peggy's, familiar faces and hugs and kisses all around, except for Greg. He's new. There's a large group of women fronting the bar. Are they blocking access on purpose? The unknowns, except for Greg, are artists, 15 mature women. There are more artists than writers. Clearly, they're outnumbered. Probably good to exercise caution. The artists are friendly, but I think two of them are carrying concealed brushes. The writers are concerned not about the brushes, but David is absent. Gary worries that he may change if he paints alongside the 15 females. Karen is not worried. Cindy is subdued. She probably needs some yoga. Monday, first class for the writers. John's lecture, and Scott is first for his critique. John thinks his lecture was great, but his t-shirt doesn't seem to fit right. Scott experiences deja vu and wonders why things haven't changed. Or have they changed? Why are things the same and why do they change? I think Scott is a Unitarian. Cindy is disappointed when the yoga sessions are canceled. Readings that night, David, Karen, Greg, and Peter. David goes first. He wants to go first. He has rescued a group of adolescent campers the night before, cooked for them, changed a flat, counseled and reassured them. His absence on Sunday is excused. I am proud to know David. Karen is next, but the clouds are threatening. The Wizard of Oz has been a recurring nightmare. She is afraid of melting and requests a change of venue. Her request is granted, and she emotes her reading. I love Karen. Of that she is aware. However, she has purchased bread earlier of which she will not share.
I told you I would.
Break and reset to original venue for Greg. He should be nervous. He is the newbie. Greg discloses that he has a master's in theology, which is okay because Greg's wife, Merrick, is a nurse. And he has two blonde-headed daughters, Maddie and Sonia. I hope they will be Democrats.
To their parents.
Greg invokes his preacher's voice. Greg passes his pre-initiation trial. Pete reads. He will not melt, but his pages do. But Pete is fearless. And he writes pictures, and I fear not for Pete. Tuesday. John's lecture is better even than the day before, and his t-shirt fits more comfortably, but the altitude is affecting his hair. Reading at Somos, John, Scott, Cully, and Teddy, and a good turnout from the artist and interested public. John is first, and that is as it should be. Though John admits to a long-standing difficulty with abstract numbers and problems, his most observable difficulty seems to be operating the clock on his phone. His readings are superb and enjoyable, he thinks. I agree, we agree, and that is as it should be. Scott reads next, but before doing so, he is exposed as not talking / interacting with a certain individual. Scott smiles to himself, confident that such insight should not be overlooked. Scott concludes by offering a personality inventory to the audience, of which only 6 people achieve a reasonably normal and scaled score. None of the writers, those associated with writers, or the artist are among those 6 individuals. Cully realizes that the lighting in the Somos facility may detract from his readings, as several of the spots align with his bald pate. Undaunted and confident, he opts not to preface his remarks with any mention of a blinding reflection or potential mention of damage to one's eyesight. Cully's reading is described by one of the audience as bruising. He accepts the compliment. Teddy's close, personal, and intimate relationship with the MC has resulted in her going last. Her reading is adequate, actually more than adequate, as she employs a reading style where she focuses on a member of the audience as she recites her dialogue. Cully, on whom she focuses, restrains with some effort himself from responding to questions in the dialogue. There is concern expressed, however, of Teddy's confidence in writing dialogue from the male perspective. Wednesday. David brings a musical instrument to the evening session. I am certain it is not a saxophone. Liz Truppen-Pulley, a literary agent from Santa Fe with 47 years in publishing, meets with the writers in the evening, providing further insight into the business end of writing, followed by Q&A. She pulls no punches and gives an honest and insightful appraisal. She likes and loves writers, but acknowledges that her profession is not for the thin-skinned or one whose confidence may waver. She enjoys her opportunity to meet with the writers and the social interaction. Later, the next day, I find she steeps her hot tea exactly 5 minutes before drinking. Artist exhibit. Peggy's students exhibit their works. The writers vote on best of show. My vote does not go to any of the top 3. Gary's vote goes to the artist who's taken best of show. Well, that just goes to show you. Dinner at Lambert's, great as usual. Liz has a split plate, a beet salad and rack of lamb. Delicious, Liz declares as she gnaws on a lamb rib. John buys Liz's dinner. The writers group and the friends and family are at 2 separate tables. The artists are all at one table where many bottles of wine are consumed. I learned something not heretofore known from the wait staff. Pete and Scott closed down the bar at Lambert's that night. Pete expresses mild, not absolute, regret the following day. John's lecture that morning was even better than Monday and Tuesday. Wow, he thinks. Thursday, the garden party at Peggy and Pete starts building at 5 p.m. The public is invited, includes a couple from Denver whose thought is, this could be interesting. Also attending, Kate's fan club. The artist and Peggy are still in the back field. Jim Harris and Pete Mlodnik, New Mexico poets, are up first. They are not young, but their readings are enjoyable. Kate Crawford does her flamenco reading. Earlier, Kate had created an unforgettable mind picture of a young female with a limp picking her nose. Wow. Pete closes out the reading with 2 selections, including one with a Lenny Bruce flavor. Dinner from Guadalajara, and then music from Kate Mann and Mark Dudrow. Scott explains to me why Kate's right arm is more developed than her left. A most enjoyable evening for all. Bo humps a larger dog. John's lecture that morning was beyond compare. The students are in awe, he says. The artist session concludes. Friday, John's lecture exceeds levels of expectation that have yet to be imagined. Greg will be given the password and secret handshake tonight. Pete and Peggy look forward to our leaving. Rosie, Caleb, and James have arrived, and that is yet another example of where one, that being David, has married way up. After living with Cully for a week and his frequent and creative use of a certain expletive, I will need at least 1 week to recover. But most sincerely, thanks John, thanks Cindy, thanks Pete, thanks Peggy.
Thank you, Jim Bob. Thank you, Bob.
And Bo!
So, last year I told a joke that Peggy tells me Pete and Peggy tells me has reverberated through her granddaughter's school because of the key line, or the punchline, such as it was. So, I'll tell another G-rated joke. Yes, used frequently at the stock show, because we have 4-year-olds and up and 80-year-olds plus at the stock show. And so those 2 jokes last year were snail jokes. This particular joke involves a very elderly couple, both in their 90s. They found themselves in court because the elderly woman had been found shoplifting in a grocery store. So she appears before the judge along with her husband, who is there to support her, and the judge says, "And exactly what did you steal? What did you shoplift?" And she said, "A can of peaches." He said, "I see. And exactly how many peaches were in this can?" he says. And she said, 6. And the judge says, "And so I'm going to sentence you to 6 days. And her husband said, "Excuse me, Judge." And the judge says, "What is it?" And her husband says, "She also stole a can of peas."
I think you should tell them.
The snail.
Snails.
Yes, you didn't hear the snail joke.
They didn't hear the
right?
snail joke.
Okay, he needs to tell you that.
My granddaughter loves
Yeah.
it.
It's a good one.
Okay, the one that's been made famous.
Yes.
Well, you almost have to have the first one before you understand.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, everybody.
okay, so
It's my fault.
Context is everything.
okay, so Maddie and Sonia and Caleb and James, you'll remember this, or maybe you won't. So there were 2 snail jokes last year, and I got the the raised eyebrow from Rosie and David. Are these jokes okay for you? And so they are, right? And so here's the first snail joke. You guys know what a snail is, right? Okay.
Yeah, but do they know what?
So
That was my
there
problem
was this
retelling this.
there was this snail, and you know how snails are. They creep along and they leave a little bit of slime, but they go real slow, right? And so this snail says, I am sick of that reputation. I'm going to buy a race car. And so he goes to a car dealership, and he goes up to the salesman, and he explains to the salesman what he wants, a very fast car. He said, but here's what I want with my race car. He said, I want a big S painted on it. And the salesman said, well, kind of strange having a snail come into the showroom. Maybe not so strange having an S painted on the side of the car. But he said, okay, we'll do it. And so the car is ready. And the snail picks up the car. And he gets into the car, and it's a small town. But he races from one end of town to the other as fast as he can. And he does it more than once. And he does it 3 times. And people are standing back against the building from the sidewalk because he is going up and down so fast. And then you hear one of the townspeople say, wow, look at that S car go.
Yeah.
Is there a second one?
There is a,
You know what? It's supposed to be a stupid.
it's supposed to be a stupid
You
joke.
wouldn't have it in there.
Okay, and so the
So-
second joke also has to do with the snail. So the snail has made his way to the front porch of this guy's house. And every morning this guy comes out and opens the door and looks down, and there's his paper that's been thrown that morning, and he picks up the paper. So this morning he goes to the front door and he opens it and he picks up his paper and he sees this snail right there on the threshold of his house, of the front door. So he picks up his paper, but he also picks up the snail and he flings it into the front yard. Closes the door, goes in and reads his paper. 6 months later, the guy goes to the front door, opens it, reaches down to pick up his paper. Who do you think is there? The snail. And the snail looks up at him and says, what was that about? I'm telling you, years later, you'll remember this joke.
You will.
Peggy
So
told us
should
our
I
granddaughter.
finish or you
And
finish?
then she comes to Peggy like weeks later and goes, I really couldn't remember the whole joke, but everybody in the school is always saying, what was that all about?
So it's all over the school. I mean, if a boy comes up and baps a girl on the back of the, instead of going and chasing them like girls do at that age or whatever,